In August 2005, Daisy, an elderly woman, lies in a hospital bed, her days numbered. Despite her evident pain, she perks up when she hears a train in the distance and decides to share a story with her daughter, Caroline. She recounts the construction of the nearby train station in 1918, initiated by a blind clockmaker who had lost his son in the war. Pouring his grief into his craft, he created a unique clock for the station's opening, astonishing everyone by designing it to run backwards. He explained that the reversed clock was a memorial for those who had lost their children to the war, offering a symbolic hope of undoing such losses. After completing this poignant tribute, the clockmaker vanished. Daisy then requests that Caroline fetch a particular diary from her bag. It belongs to Benjamin Button, whose first diary entry in 1985 declares his intention to share his life story. Beginning in 1918, just after the end of World War I, as the world celebrates, Thomas rushes to see his wife, who dies in childbirth. Distraught, Thomas then sees his newborn son and is horrified by his appearance. In a panic, he flees with the infant. As the baby cries incessantly, Thomas considers drowning him in the river, but is spotted by a police officer. Evading capture, Thomas ducks into dark street and leaves the baby in the steps of a beautiful house, along with all the money in his pockets. As Thomas departs, the homeowners, stepping outside, accidentally stumble upon the baby. Queenie, uncovering the baby, sees that he resembles an elderly infant. Her boyfriend suggests they involve the police, but Queenie, moved by the baby's unusual condition, decides to care for him herself. She hides him in a drawer until a doctor can examine him, discovering he has numerous health issues, including near blindness from cataracts, arthritis, and osteoporosis, with little hope given for his survival. Yet, Queenie sees the baby as a miracle and chooses to raise him as her own, introducing him as her sister's child to the residents of the retirement home where she works. The elderly tenants are not perturbed by his appearance, finding him rather endearing. Over time, Benjamin's body strengthens, though he still appears aged. Living among seniors, he never feels out of place, simply believing he resembles everyone else. He grows dependent on Queenie, who assists him in daily activities like bathing. Benjamin learns to read but remains wheelchair-bound, often wondering about the children he sees in town, though Queenie keeps him confined to their home except for church outings. One evening at church, after the priest theatrically attempts to cure Queenie's infertility and commands Benjamin to walk, he tries to stand but falls. Encouraged to try again, Benjamin manages to take a few steps before the priest unexpectedly dies. As time progresses, Benjamin's health slowly improves. He eventually meets Pygmy, who introduces him to the outside world. They share stories and drinks by the lake, forming a bond before Pygmy departs for an appointment, leaving Benjamin to miss his streetcar and navigate home on crutches. It's late when he arrives, and though Queenie scolds him, he cherishes the memory of his first taste of freedom. By 1930, Benjamin's condition has improved enough for him to use a cane. At a Thanksgiving dinner, he meets Daisy, the granddaughter of a tenant, and feels an immediate attraction since they are the same age. That evening, Daisy invites him to her blanket fort, where they share a tender moment, only to be interrupted by Daisy's grandmother. In the present day, Caroline realizes that her mother is the Daisy from the journal. Shortly after the birth of her child, Pygmy leaves town, leaving Benjamin feeling a profound sense of loneliness. Benjamin's health improves daily, allowing him to manage his own bathing and enjoy tougher foods as his teeth strengthen. A new tenant, proficient at the piano, teaches him to play, his fingers now free of arthritis. Drawn to the docks, Benjamin hears Captain Mike calling for help one day and volunteers, securing a job as the boat's janitor. Though the work is humble, Benjamin thrives, quickly befriending Mike, who is astonished to learn of Benjamin's inexperience with women, mistaking his aged appearance for actual old age. Mike introduces him to a house of ill repute, where despite the initial disdain from the women due to his appearance, one agrees to be with him. Benjamin surprises her with the vitality of a young man, promising to return often. Leaving the establishment, he unexpectedly encounters Thomas, who offers him a lift. They end up at a bar, where Benjamin experiences alcohol for the first time, staying until close. Thomas drives him home, where Queenie scolds him, and Benjamin endures his first hangover. During a haircut, the tenant remarks on his increasingly youthful appearance, and Benjamin realizes he is actually growing younger. When Daisy visits her grandmother, Benjamin enjoys spending time with her. One day, he takes her to the boat and persuades Mike to take them out on the water. They have a wonderful time, watching a cruise ship sail past, which makes Daisy dream of traveling on one. By 1936, At the age of 17, Benjamin decides to leave home. After a heartfelt farewell to Queenie, Daisy extracts a promise from him to keep in touch. He joins Mike's tugboat crew, and Caroline later finds the postcards he sent to Daisy over the years. Benjamin travels to various harbors worldwide, growing stronger and younger each day, receiving letters from Daisy, who is studying ballet in New York. In 1941, during a severe snowstorm in northern Russia, they visit a bar, where Benjamin notes the universal behavior of drunkards. In the hotel, struggling with the cold, he meets Elizabeth, an Englishwoman unhappily married to a spy. They start sharing nightly teas, exchanging stories and growing closer. Caroline discovers a postcard revealing Benjamin's newfound love, which had deeply hurt Daisy when she first received it. Elizabeth introduces Benjamin to new experiences like caviar and vodka and shares her past attempt to swim the English Channel. Their friendship deepens into an affair, setting rules to avoid falling in love. They spend their nights together until Elizabeth suddenly leaves, leaving only a note saying it was nice to have met him. The next day, the tugboat crew learns of the attack on Pearl Harbor and their new role supporting the U.S. Navy. The cook resigns to be with his wife, and Benjamin takes over his duties. When a soldier aboard entrusts Benjamin with his money to give to his wife if anything happens to him, it underscores the reality of their situation. That night, the crew is alerted by a bell and sees a distant fire, signaling further action. A transport ship carrying over 1,000 men was hit by a torpedo, splitting it in half, and Benjamin's boat was first to arrive at the scene. Nearby, an enemy submarine poses a threat, prompting the crew to attack. As the enemy fires at them, the crew retaliates, eventually crashing into the submarine, causing it to explode and sink. However, there's no time to celebrate. The entire crew, including Benjamin, has been hit by gunfire. Benjamin shares a final moment with Mike before he succumbs to his injuries. The next day, Benjamin is rescued by Allied forces, and as he throws a lifesaver into the sea, Hummingbird appears around it, a reminder of Mike's fondness for hummingbirds, which are rare at sea. Benjamin fulfills the soldier's last wish by sending his money to his wife. By 1945, Benjamin, now physically 26 but appearing 50, returns home to reunite with Queenie and meets his teenage sister. He learns of his mother's boyfriend's recent death and settles back into life at the retirement home, playing piano for the residents. One day, Daisy, now a young woman, visits her grandmother and initially fails to recognize Benjamin. When she does, she rushes to embrace him, upset that he stopped writing to her. They reminisce about old times and go out to dinner, where Daisy's changed world and habits, like smoking, strike Benjamin. After dinner, at the lake, Daisy dances and impulsively kisses Benjamin, suggesting they become intimate. But confused, Benjamin declines, and Daisy returns to New York. As time passes, Benjamin continues to grow younger and stronger. One night, Thomas visits, now using a crutch due to a foot infection. They dine together, and Thomas reveals his illness is terminal. He takes Benjamin to his button factory, discloses that he is Benjamin's father, and offers him an inheritance. Overwhelmed, Benjamin leaves but later returns to reconcile the lake, finding peace with Thomas before his death. At the funeral, Benjamin reassures Queenie of her place as his mother. In 1947, using his inheritance, Benjamin visits Daisy in New York after her ballet performance. Backstage, Daisy is taken aback and awkwardly rejects dinner but invites him to join her friends at a club. Unable to watch Daisy with another man, Benjamin leaves. Daisy follows, explaining her life had to continue without him, and Benjamin accepts this. Later, Daisy admits that she failed to appreciate Benjamin's visit about his father. She also reveals her career highlight of dancing with the Bolshoi Ballet before joining a Paris ballet company. Despite still thinking of Benjamin, she asks him to stay out of her life after a taxi accident ends her dancing career. Unbeknownst to her, Benjamin remains in Paris to watch over her. Eventually, Benjamin leaves Paris, continues sailing, and enjoys life, occasionally remembering Daisy. In 1962, Daisy visits him at Queenie's, and they reconnect, finally consummating their relationship when they appear the same age. They travel together, enjoying life until they return home and learn of Queenie's death. They mourn at her funeral and decide it's time to start anew. After selling Thomas' house, Benjamin buys a duplex to start a new chapter with Daisy. Together, they relish in making the space their own and enjoy watching the Beatles on television for the first time. Their neighbor, a physical therapist, recommends that Daisy start swimming, but seeing other women at the pool makes her feel self-conscious. Benjamin supports her through this, and eventually, Daisy overcomes her insecurities and opens a dance studio to teach young girls. One evening at the studio, Daisy reveals to Benjamin that she is pregnant. Benjamin feels conflicted, fearing the baby might inherit his condition and doubting his ability to be a good father as he continues to grow younger. Meanwhile, on television, Benjamin sees that Elizabeth, now 68, has become the oldest woman to swim the English Channel. A few months later, Daisy gives birth to a healthy girl named Caroline, after Benjamin's birth mother. In the present, Caroline realizes that Benjamin is her biological father and that Daisy remarried after him. Upset by this revelation, Caroline steps out for a smoke but is quickly scolded by a nurse and sent back inside. As Caroline grows up healthy and strong, Benjamin's fears about his reverse aging intensify. He asks Daisy to find a suitable father figure for Caroline. Believing it's best he leaves before Caroline is old enough to remember him and be hurt by his departure. Despite Daisy's objections, Benjamin insists it's for the best, as she can't care for both him and Caroline. After Caroline's first birthday, Benjamin liquidates all of Thomas' assets and places the money in a savings account for her, then disappears in the night. In the present, Caroline discovers postcards from Benjamin for each of her birthdays, filled with apologies for his absence. Benjamin begins traveling the world, working at jobs and savoring life. One night, he visits the dance studio appearing as a man in his 20s. Daisy introduces him as an old friend in front of Caroline, who doesn't recognize him. The moment becomes tense when Daisy's new husband arrives. Sensing the awkwardness and quickly taking Caroline away, Daisy acknowledges that Benjamin was right. Raising two teenagers would have been too much. They share a final passionate night after Daisy visits him at his hotel. Later, Caroline recalls meeting Benjamin that night, realizing it was indeed him. As the news reports Hurricane Katrina approaching, Caroline decides to stay in the hospital with Daisy, knowing her time is short. Daisy resumes the story, explaining that after Caroline's stepfather died, she received a call about Benjamin, now a child, living in a retirement home managed by her daughter. Child Protective Services had discovered him in an abandoned building in New Orleans. With Daisy's contact details in his journal, Daisy visits and finds Benjamin playing piano, showing signs of dementia and not recognizing her. But she still feels a bond. As Benjamin regresses to a toddler and then to an infant, Daisy moves into the retirement home to care for him. In his final days, he barely recognizes anyone or anything until his peaceful passing in 2003 after giving Daisy one last meaningful look. As the storm worsens, Caroline checks on the facility's condition, while Daisy, seeing a hummingbird at the window, murmurs a final goodbye to Benjamin before she passes away. The storm intensifies, causing floods that threaten the old clocks stored in a basement.